Ladies and gentlemen, the event will now begin. Chris, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Gibson, and I would like to welcome you to today's event, How Technology Will Augment and Optimize Your Legal Department of Tomorrow. This event is part of the webcast series, Legal Operations in a Time of Disruption, that began yesterday and will continue through Thursday, May 21st. This event is brought to you and sponsored by Relativity and is hosted by Corporate Counsel. Before we begin today's event, I want to go over some of the things that you see in front of you. Everything on your audience console is customizable. You can enlarge, shrink, or minimize any of the windows that you see. Additionally, your console contains many of today's social media sharing tools. You can tweet or share right from your console, and we encourage you to do so. Today's sponsor has also provided their slides for download, as well as some additional resources for your viewing pleasure. These can be found in the resources widget on your console to the left of the slides that you see in front of you. Lastly, below your slide window, you should see a Q&A widget. If you have any technical questions, please submit those and we will get a response to you as quickly as possible. Furthermore, if you have questions for our presenters, please submit those as well, and we will try and answer them at the end of today's presentation. If we cannot get to your question, you may receive a response following today's event. If you have to leave us during any portion of today's presentation, it is being recorded, and you will receive instructions on how to access the on-demand event. Now, for introductions of our speakers and today's topic, I will pass it over to Adrian Knight, Corporate Sales Manager at Relativity. Adrian, please go ahead.
Great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the ALM webinar hosted by Relativity about how we expect technology to augment and optimize the legal department of tomorrow. I'm your host, Adrian Knight. I manage our Relativity One corporate sales team. I've spent about 7 years in the legal industry and 11 years in the software industry. Me and my team work with corporate customers to help them develop best practices around data management and e-discovery. I'm joined today by Andrea Beckman, Director of Product Management at Relativity.
Hi, everyone.
As Director of Product Management at Relativity, Andrea oversees Relativity's review, analytics, and case strategy products. She joined Relativity in 2011 and has 20 years of experience in the software product management space. Please be sure to use the Q&A window throughout the session today. We'd love to hear and answer any of your questions and provide more clarity to help you in shaping your legal department. And just remember, this session is being recorded, and we will be sure to share a copy of this with the audience following the session, as well as a copy of our slides. But before we can really understand where we're headed, it'd be helpful to understand where we're at and what kind of factors are driving a need for change. So right now, the legal industry is at a crossroads. Great uncertainties are driving the need to identify opportunities for efficiency and predictability in spend for in-house teams. Emerging and evolving technologies are changing the ways we communicate with each other and what is discoverable. The ways that we work are in flux, and new privacy regulations are causing organizations to rethink their approach to enterprise data and customer relationships. One thing that is certain is that great unknowns for economic variability and regulatory scrutiny await in the near future. Technologies like analytics and automation are growing, they're becoming more commonplace, and they present opportunities as well as challenges for us. As pressures grow on in-house legal teams, many are obliged to explore the promise of these technologies as a means to save resources and regain more control over their operations. We see pressures building on these teams from multiple fronts. Corporate legal teams must be looking for ways to alleviate the pressures that seem to be growing increasingly quickly on all sides. Legal departments continue to experience increasing demand for services. Overall, though, more work's moving in-house as one of the several methods to control overall costs. The amount of work that teams are being asked to take on is growing, and the type of work is becoming more complicated. This trend presents a growing problem, particularly for larger organizations. A recent survey from Thomson Reuters Legal Tracker showed that 53% of teams surveyed, 64% for larger organizations, said that they expect more work to move in-house. 64% of teams expected their budget to remain flat or to decrease. That's 78% in large organizations. This pressure is compounded by the sheer volume of data and is expected to rise at an increasingly rapid rate for the foreseeable future. IDC is forecasting a 5-fold rise in worldwide data by 2025 to 175 zettabytes. This data management journey has really just begun for organizations. Collecting, storing, analyzing, and utilizing this data will continue to be a growing burden for most in-house teams. As more and more people and enterprises doing everything online, case sizes are simply just growing. And as those amounts of available data grows, it becomes exponentially more difficult to manage it all. This growth is illustrated by a few stats provided here around data growth and channel proliferation. Think about all of these short messages flying around your company from a plethora of platforms that didn't even exist 5 years ago, or from a CRM and project management tools that have messaging built into them. Not to mention Zoom and Teams, whose usage has simply been skyrocketing over the last few months. Around 500,000 organizations are using Teams and over 300 million are using Zoom, with participants internal and external every day. Those meetings, which are easily reportable, present a new data management challenge in and of itself. These statistics are mind-boggling. Over 23 billion text messages are sent per day, and we're spending an average of 3 hours and 43 minutes on our phones each day. Legal teams need a way to manage all of this growing data in a way that makes communications easy to follow. In a word, this is simply an explosion of discoverable data that legal departments are potentially responsible for handling. Not to mention the risks associated with that data, it's now more crucial than ever to manage data securely and efficiently. Organizations that mismanage data run the risk of security breaches and lost revenue associated with those security breaches. And the stakes involved in protecting your data and digital infrastructure continue to grow, so does the potential reward for nefarious actors. According to Accenture, there's been a 72% increase in the actual cost of cybercrime over the last 5 years. With the average cost of cyber attack being about $1.3 million, this is not a challenge that any legal team wants to have or deal with firsthand. An increasing emphasis will need to be placed on elevating cybersecurity from a specialty owned by a specific security team to one that is front and center for legal departments. And that takes a lot of resources, a lot of times resources that we don't have. Over the last few years, we've seen the role of the general counsel in the legal department at large corporations shift from responsive positions or a department of the quote-unquote no to one that's increasingly consulted about strategic decisions and the direction of the business. This is largely driven by the recognition that exposure to risk and regulations have grown and now pose greater implications than ever before for the viability of an enterprise. So like it or not, this has resulted in many legal teams being pushed outside their comfort zone by having to shoulder unfamiliar or burdensome new roles and responsibilities. This is underscored by a quote from the research effort that we at Relativity undertook with FTI. Rather than serving as a gatekeeper, the general counsel is now expected by regulators, institutions, and the board of their own organization to help steer the ship if the business is not headed in the right direction. In short, the confluence of these pressures won't allow you to be able to staff your way out of this new challenge. All these factors put new burdens on limited resources. Corporate legal teams can only expect to face ever-increasing and changing pressures. They must be looking for ways to alleviate these pressures that are growing increasingly quickly on all sides. Companies are shifting in how they look to their legal departments. They're asking them to be more strategic. They're asking them to do work that they haven't traditionally done in the past while being more efficient while they do it. And above all, they're asking them to help save money. Greater systems efficiency contributes to an exponential growth of productivity, allowing you to do more than ever before. And corporate legal teams need a tool or tools that can help them handle whatever is thrown their way. The entire field of litigation support has grown because of technological innovations. There are people who know and how to run these programs. Again, we heard this as part of our general counsel research effort that was undertaken with FTI. In the context of this quote, it should come as no surprise that fully 2/3 of legal departments identified using technology to simplify workflow and manual processes at a high priority. It's all about the ability to improve how efficient your operations can run. These trends present opportunities for organizations to be more strategic in how they apply their limited human resources and provide direction in what kinds of technological solutions will be most impactful to implement. It will simply not be possible to keep up with the rising mountains of data and shifting asks of in-house teams with current solutions that are in place today. The strategic application of the right technologies in just the right way provides one of the few viable avenues to realizing these goals and adapting these challenges. Furthermore, you need to be able to show metrics of performance improvement in a hard and fast numbers. The right technologies can help you do this better as well. The more you can utilize technology to improve workflows, the better understanding you'll have of what efficiencies are gained and where opportunities exist for future improvements. This will also enable in-house teams to better measure and communicate the value that they deliver.
Thanks, Adrian. I think that sets the stage really well. We believe that a prescribed approach to disciplines like analytics and automation are a great first step for many in-house teams to keep up with this rapid and rising data challenge that Adrian spoke about. And I'm going to go into more detail to talk about how your legal departments of the future may need to use solutions like analytics and automation. You actually might already be tired of hearing about analytics or AI by now. It's all around you in everyday life. I know I get suggestions sometimes that are just eerily accurate about what I might like to read or listen to or buy. Analytics means a lot of different things to different people, though. In the context of legal and discovery, here's some of the functionality that comes to my mind when we think about analytics. But now think about just picking out one of those tools and using it in your everyday work to help you simplify and get through some of those growing document and caseloads that Adrian spoke about. Here's what your data may feel like at some times. Just a big disorganized mess of information, and somehow you have to sort through and understand it all. And let's not forget that that's actually just the data of today. As Adrian talked about earlier, what's coming from a data perspective, it's really important to have your data house in order today. But what if your data looked like this instead? With clustering, which is just one analytics capability, your data is clearly organized, so you can get right to the important information you need and not feel overwhelmed by that huge mountain of data. Instead of that huge mass of books, they're organized by subject. Each subject's clearly identified and then is further subdivided into more specific topics. Having this type of structure now really better enables you to tackle the data that you have today as well as the wave that's going to be coming in the future. So clustering documents like books in a library creates a hierarchy of conceptually similar documents. It requires no previous knowledge of the data by the user, which is one of the reasons I think it's really such a great tool. Clustering has a lot of different uses. First, often it's used to investigate and explore large data sets. You can either cluster your entire data set or just a subset. So for example, if you have a few custodians that are of high interest right now, you can just narrow down and only cluster their documents and see what concepts surface. Second, if you plan to go through a more extensive review, you can batch out the documents by clusters so that reviewers gain efficiencies by reviewing the same type of content over and over in their queue. And third, clustering is often used for culling. You can review samples of documents in clusters that have clearly not relevant titles and then decide you don't need to review any more of these documents. They can be culled out from the data set. So let's take a look at one case study just to see about it in action. A law firm customer of ours was working on behalf of an insurance company. And one Friday morning, opposing counsel sent the team a production of about 8,000 documents. So not too bad, not too big a data set, but the partner on the case was hoping to see all the documents, the key documents by Monday morning. And that left just one associate with a weekend to complete the review. But by clustering the document, the associate was able to quickly find the most relevant documents in the case and ignore the non-relevant content. He was actually able to determine that the key documents were all in just one cluster, containing only about 450 documents, which was just 6% of the opposing counsel's production set. So as a result, the associate was able to complete the review in just a few hours, and I'm sure he saved his weekend plans as well. So that's the benefit of just using one analytics capability. But the challenges that in-house teams face can be resolved so much more efficiently by leveraging more than just one analytics tool. Really, all of these tools serve different purposes, and they're built for different reasons. And they're even more powerful when you use them in conjunction with one another. So let me dig into another quick case study to give you an idea of how that works. A multinational corporation of ours was working with one of our partners, and they needed to investigate a potential compliance violation. So an employee in a foreign office allegedly accepted some free travel and hotel accommodations from vendors. A forensic analyst was able to collect and image the employee's laptop and mobile phone, and after they processed that data, they had about 100,000 documents to analyze. Of course, they didn't want to miss any documents that were showing the misconduct or the tangential activity that might have implicated other employees in this as well. So first up, they used email threading, and they pulled together all the individual documents back into conversation threads so that they can include only that inclusive document, or that document that's most often last in the conversation thread. Next, they used clustering, and they drill down into the important topics, including communications on travel, entertainment, flights, hotels, things like that. And then along with clustering, the team used communication analysis, which is essentially a map of who's talking to who, like you see in the screenshot on the right here. The team quickly identified the key players who were involved in the topics under investigation. And from there, they had access to a single consolidated view of the communications and the activity that occurred. Ultimately, this combination of tools reduced the data set and focus from that original 100,000 documents to just 600 emails. And the team looked into these interactions and found that the employee potentially did buy flights and hotels for their significant other. So after using these tools, what the customer told us is that using all these capabilities together, it turned the review from a linear process to geometric. It allowed them to take a microscope to the data. And to me, this small case study showed a nice example how using several analytics capabilities together really adds a new dimension of discovery. Okay, so great. You have all of these tools available to you, but how do you put it into action? If you're like most people, you might run your search terms, take a coffee break, then you remember you want to spread your data, maybe take another break, grab some lunch. Then you decide, oh, right, I should cluster the data to understand it that way, take a break. And finally you realize, I want to investigate the communications and see, who's talking to who. But what you need is actually a repeatable process that you can run on every case, every time new data is entered into that case. You don't want to rely on manual error-prone processes to get to that really important case information. So that's why you need automation. We believe that using automation along with analytics can truly optimize your legal department of tomorrow. So we're about to introduce a new capability for Relativity 1 called automated workflows. It allows case administrators to predefine preset workflows for data to flow through their case activities. It's really a programmable set of actions that occurs after a specific event or trigger occurs. For example, as you see in this mock-up, the administrators create a workflow where when new documents are added into the case, two different threads of actions happen here. On the left, you can see the specific search index is going to be updated. And when that index is updated, the search term report will be updated. And at the same time, you have an analytics update, and then a cluster set is rerun. And when the entire workflow is done, an email is being sent to you that says, your data is ready to review. Administrators will be able to create their own customized automated workflows with a dozen different configurations and triggers and actions and things like that. And it'll be templatized. So anytime a new workspace or case is spun up, you'll immediately be able to have this automated workflow for you. and it'll be seamless to the end user. They'll just be able to take action on these analytic capabilities. So we believe that the combination of AI and automation delivers value to legal teams that's actually many times greater than each individual capability. This is how in-house teams are going to find their way out of that current set of challenges that Adrian outlined at the beginning of the session. These capabilities are going to allow you to understand the facts of a case more quickly, getting to the truth of a matter sooner, so you have the clear picture of the risks your organization faces. Of course, that's going to position you to make the most informed decision possible about that matter. Second, it's going to increase many teams' ability to handle larger volumes of data themselves. Being able to wrangle and organize that data, remove repetitive tasks is really going to free up your resources for higher level thinking and more important tasks. Also, with the automated capabilities, you're going to reduce error-prone processes. And the fewer instances you invite, human interaction into a process, obviously the less chance you're going to have for mistakes. It's going to reduce the risk of oversights and any ramifications that come from that. Simplified workflows reduce your team's touch points to the ones that actually matter the most, the highest value activities. And obviously there are growing demands on your in-house legal team, so why not spend time on the activities that actually matter most and move your business forward, rather than on time-consuming ones and distracting administrative processes. We think by freeing up your resources with analytics and automated workflows together, we're doing just that. It allows you to position your people where they'll make the greatest impact. So this is no means an exhaustive look at how in-house departments need to adapt. It really just scratches the surface. Other technologies, such as machine learning, remote collections, intuitive user interfaces, they'll all play pivotal roles in how in-house team of tomorrow is able to adapt and do more than they ever have before. So this is a really short session. It was just meant to be a study in the potential that exists for the efficiencies and technologies that are available today, and to be inspiration and hopefully optimistic and show some excitement about the fact when these technologies are properly used and orchestrated together, the benefits are many times greater than the sum of each individual part. Relativity is committed to remaining at the vanguard of innovation and driving, operational efficiency through the smart application of technology to help you better organize your data, discover the truth, and act on it.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. It looks like we do have a couple of questions that have come in here. Just a quick reminder to everybody, if you have questions, feel free to submit them in the question and answer panel. Okay, so the first question, Andrea, is, do you believe that this will lower labor costs?
Oh, definitely. Certainly, anything that you can automate and remove rote tasks that are repetitive in nature and don't require kind of human intellect to make decisions will certainly reduce costs. And those individuals then can move on to things that require more insight and looking at the key documents and forming, the strategies around their cases and their matters rather than pushing buttons.
Great. Okay, we have a second question that came in. So these were non-cognitive routine type tasks that were automated. Is that correct? And not cognitive routine?
Correct. I believe so. If you take things like a review process, there's going to be human interaction, of course, that's needed at the beginning. So, for example, you've established your review protocol, reviewers start learning. That's where the human part comes in because they're making the nuanced decision about what's relevant to your cases. So they're saying, yes, this is relevant, but let's all agree that no, this is not part of the relevance protocol for your case. Once that protocol kind of settles out and the decisions are made, that's when AI takes over, and it leverages your human thought on the rest of the documents where you don't need to do that because you've already established a consistent protocol, you've coded to that, and that's when that kind of leverages the best of both worlds, the analytics capabilities as well as the human thought.
Great. And it looks like we have a follow-up, Andrea, to the last question. It says, associated with President Trump was hacked, but also a lot of other law firm websites do not even have security seal or SSL connection to their website. How do you think this change is coming? Or a change is coming?
Not sure I followed that question exactly. There's certainly a focus more on security. I know that's a huge focus for us at Relativity One, and ensuring that, especially as workforces are moving remote and things like that, that we're set up with the best security around, whether it's in your home office environment as well as where we host and store our data. So we may have to follow up on that one with specifics, because I don't believe I know the answer to that offhand.
Okay, yeah, we'll take that one offline, and we can always float it past our security team as well and follow up on it. A couple more questions here. How do you anticipate many corporations' data footprint to be affected as a result of social distancing and work from home measures?
Sure. I think the idea there is that really the types of data that people are going to be using are going to change. So obviously a lot of us are now on more messaging tools like a Slack or a Teams. We're all on video conferences that have many different components to them. So they have the actual video web conference. They have the chat that you can do on the side. There may be a transcription of that video conference call. And so that's what we're anticipating at Relativity, that we're going to be getting an influx of those files. We're actually building capabilities so that you can review them even more in a more streamlined fashion. So we think that the type of data that's going to be coming in and coming at us is going to change. And obviously it's all going to continue to rise in terms of the amount of data.
Got it. Okay, I know we're down to a couple minutes, but we only have 2 questions left as of now. Second to last question, how do you identify the points in a workflow that would benefit the most from increased human attention and decision making?
Sure. I think it's about taking the rote tasks out of things and separating them from things that do require human interpretation. So similar to that earlier question we had, but I think if you can write a rule for it, it's not something that you should spend time on. So again, things like establishing a review protocol at the beginning to determine relevance, that is important. That a computer is not going to be able to tell you unless you teach it. And so being able to say at the beginning of the case, here's what's relevant to me, go find more like that. The go find more like that is what the computer is really good at. But you as the human need to obviously teach it what you're looking for and what it means to you, to what is important to your particular case.
Great. And then the final question, what are the greatest barriers to adoption or hurdles that you see from in-house teams, and how do you counter those?
Sure. I would say here, really it's just fear of change or fear of the unknown, right? Nobody likes change. Your application on your mobile device changes out from under you, and you're like, oh, why is it changing? I don't like that. But really what you need there to deal with that is just a little bit of education, maybe on the value of the change, as well as the necessary steps and tactics that you need to take to utilize that and get those benefits. So sometimes it's really just taking a workflow at a time. Earlier today I talked about clustering. That's just one workflow to organize your data. Start with that. And we've seen customers be really successful when they train and use it on their data, and maybe even run it behind the scenes or alongside their regular processes so people can ease into it. And then you can show a particular, lawyer, hey, take a look at this. Here's how your data's clustered. Does that look like an interesting cluster to you? Let's dig in. Or maybe they run active learning in the background and they are able to find more relevant documents than they would through a manual process. I think running it on their data, taking a workflow at the time, and kind of easing people into the process and educating them, that goes a long way in getting people to adopt this.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Andrea, and thank you all for joining today. As a reminder, we will make this slide deck available for download. And thank you all so much for your time.
Thanks, Adrian. Bye-bye.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Again, a special thanks to Relativity for sponsoring and hosting today's event. We appreciate your time. This event will be recorded and you will receive instructions on how to access the on-demand recording. So keep an eye out for that in your inbox. And feel free to take a look at the rest of the webcasts that are a part of the Legal Operations in a Time of Disruption series that will continue through May 21st, which is this Thursday. Thank you all and have a great afternoon.